Hello, Andrew Martin here once again, and welcome to a further reveal about the players we have lined up to play the public Guildford Chess Club players on September the 11th. And this time we're going to concentrate on homegrown talent. Whilst many of the masters playing in the Simul don't actually come from Guildford or around Guildford, the next two players were born in the Guildford area and are two of the best young players in the country today. The first of these is a young lady called Jessica Mellor, who I think is currently 13 or 14. Anyway, she's quite famous because she won the gold medal for England in the Under-11 European Schools Championship in Krakow in 2018. It was quite a surprising result, but it was a result which was totally justified by her excellent play throughout the event. Jessica is primarily an aggressive player, so watch out for tactics if you play her in the simultaneous display. And I've chosen a game she played in the British Championships 2018, which took place in Hull, and Jessica's white against Olga Latipova. Well, Jessica opened with e4, as most really aggressive players do, and black played e5. And in this game, Jessica employed the swashbuckling Vienna Gambit, which is an offshoot of the King's Gambit. It's a very dangerous opening. White offers black a pawn in the full knowledge that if she takes that pawn, white's going to push on by. And this is a move which is inconvenient for the black knight. Well, the only square really which makes sense is to go back to base. But you don't want to be doing that in the opening phase. And after queen e7, which pins the pawn to the king, white can play queen e2. And black's still got the same problem. In actual fact, the best move for black, if we go back to f4, is d5. And with that move, I think black can achieve at least a satisfactory game out of the opening. But even so, there are complications there, which, if you know them better than your opponent, you could win the game very quickly. However, in our feature game, Latipova played knight c6, and by doing so, shows her unfamiliarity with the opening in question, because white takes in the centre and now starts to push black back with aggressive moves by the central pawns. And this is what you want to avoid with the black pieces, because once again, the knight's got to go back to base. And already, white is working up a significant advantage in development. I mean, attacks don't spring from nowhere. They spring from favourable conditions. And the usual condition that is favourable is at a big advantage in development. So already, Jessica's starting to look for the attack. So black prods at the centre, white brings out a new piece, black takes on e5, and Jessica shows herself willing to exchange queens in this position. Well, I guess if black took the queens off, which she didn't, then white's advantage in development would only grow, and threats of knight d5 or knight b5 give black a headache. So that's why Latipova plays bishop f5, keeping the pieces flowing. And now what, bishop d3, offering exchanges, which black is happy to oblige. Castles on the queen side. Castles on the queen side. Bishop c5. Rook he1. So it might seem as though exchanging the pieces off has eased black's defence. And it has to an extent. But white is retaining her advantage in development. And this is a very important feature of the position. Well, black played rook e8. I mean, I think black would probably have been better off here just developing the knight. Something like this. I mean, I think white's still a bit better, but at least there, black will be getting the pieces out. Instead, rook e8 was played, and this gives white the chance to pick up steam in terms of an attack by continuing to push those pawns. Knight a5. They do say a knight on the rim is dim, and in this case, the knight on a5 is looking rather lonely and a bit out of play. So it makes sense to create play in the centre, which is exactly what Jessica does by pushing the pawn to d6. Black takes, white recaptures, and now finally black gets the chance to put the knight on the board. But as I said before, white's advantage in development is quite substantial here because black hasn't developed that rook on h8 yet, and white moves in to threaten f7, which black defends. d7 check. the pawn advances. This is a nasty move. Black has to block the pawn, and now rook to d4. So white is now getting onto the attack, and this is where Jessica excels. Black took the knight so as not to lose time, but she's still faced with the poor position of that knight on a5. And in fact, this is what cost her the game. That and the paralysing passed pawn on d7. Rook hg8, a miserable move for the rook. Rook a4, protected by the pawn, and now Jessica finds a beautiful finish. She plays rook takes knight, pawn takes rook, and knight to c6 checkmate. Black may be rook for bishop up at the end, but the rooks are quite useless on closed files behind pawns doing absolutely nothing. So it's quite fitting that Jessica polishes off the game in this manner. The next young person I want to feature on this video is a guy called Alex Golding. A very strong player indeed. I think he goes to RGS in Guildford, the Royal Grammar School, and he is, again, a ferocious attacking player. And one of the main characteristics of his play is that he plays at very high speed, which tends to put the opponent under significant pressure. When you've got an opponent coming at you speedily and playing great attacking moves one after the other, then it's really unsettling. And this is what you can look forward to if you play Golding on September the 11th. Well, I've chosen a game he played with the black pieces against a guy called Jay Robertson, and this game was played in England back in 2016. And I'm going to have to flip the board for this one and go all the way back to the start because Golding is black in this game. And in this game, we see the Nimzo Indian defence on the board. Bishop to b4. White has opened with the traditional queen's pawn opening, and black responds with one of the best defences of all, the Nimzo Indian defence. It's a very flexible opening. Black is retaining options with his pawns. He may play d5. He may play c5. He may play b6. He may play one of these or all of these. And he can also castle quickly. So this is why the Nimzo Indian has a very good reputation at master level. Well, white plays one of the sharpest moves, f3. The intention is clear. White wants to form a centre with e4. The drawback is also clear. White blocks in the knight on g1, which slows down development. So this is a kind of risky continuation in a way, but white is balancing risk and reward. The rewards are quite high if white could build a big centre quickly, because that would cramp black. And after that, white could hope to get onto the attack. White has scored many crushing wins with this system. At any rate, Golding doesn't seem too bothered, and he continues classically with pawn up to d5. And he takes note that if white gives check here, which seems to be a fork, black can defend quite easily by bringing his knight out. And that really is not a good transaction for white, because all white's done is encourage black to make a good move. So after d5, white continues with a3, which is theoretical. That's the normal move. And so as not to lose time, black takes on c3. And then a slightly unusual move, but nothing wrong with it, knight to c6. By far the normal move here would be to play c5. And then we get quite an interesting position if white takes on d5, black recaptures, and white's played e3. But knight c6, okay, black is relying on piece development, and perhaps he's looking forward to playing the move e5 at some point soon. That would seem to me to make sense of the move knight c6. White takes on d5, getting rid of his double pawns, and then plays pawn up to e3, and Golding continues developing with bishop f5. So I think we can see, here we are, the hallmarks of an attacking style. Straightforward play. Black's developing his pieces. In the old days, there was a world champion called Mikhail Tal, who played this variation against a guy called Botvinnik in a world championship match. And Tal was a great magician, the magician of attack. He could unleash combinations from nowhere. But in fact, if you study his games quite closely, you'll see that most of his brilliant masterpieces were based on very quick development. And so perhaps they shouldn't have been surprised after all, by these brilliant attacks. They were based on a sound positional platform. Well, white played knight e2. Black castled. And now a very ambitious move by white, which actually Golding punishes. White played g4. Now, if white had foreseen what was coming, he would surely have played knight g3, which I think is the standard way to play here. Bishop d3 and then get castled. You know, and eventually you're looking to play the move e4 with white. But surely you should castle first. Having said that, here, I mean, I think black is okay. Black can choose. Black can put his knight on a5. Castles, then play c5, chipping away at the white centre. Or black could just develop the queen and rooks. I mean, actually, I quite like this method, just bringing the major pieces into the centre. I've played this variation with both colours, actually, at master level, and had great success with white. But I do understand that this is a risky variation, and you've got to be a bit careful with it. And going back to the game, g4 is a bit of an extravagance. Now, Golding moves in to punish this idea with knight takes g4. An interesting sacrifice. The queen comes out to h4. The knight blocks. And now the point of the move, bishop e4. I think without that move, black wouldn't have enough compensation for the piece. I mean, I guess Robertson might have been thinking that Golding was intending bishop takes g4. But this is not so convincing because white can put a bishop in the way. And now black has 2 pawns to the piece, which is probably not enough. So bishop e4, going back to the game. White played rook to g1, and now black snaps off the pawn on h2. Which actually is quite embarrassing for the rook on g1. So white didn't like the position after knight e2. And I can't say I blame him. Let's see, what can black play here? Well, we can start with bishop f3. And the rook on g1 is looking a bit lonely. Surprising move, but white is rather paralysed here. So Robertson cut his losses and played knight takes e4, giving the rook on g1 in order to retreat the knight to f2 and to get some sort of semblance of normality to his position. But we're going to see that actually he makes a mistake in the upcoming play. Now, bishop d2 was played. Was rook b1 a possible alternative? Well, let's just see. Rook a e8, knight h3, queen h2, bishop d3. You know, I think I prefer this for white to the game. At least he's getting his pieces out. White's a bit uncoordinated. That's the problem. You know, it takes white a long time to get his pieces into the game. Meanwhile, after moves like f6, keeping the knight out, and then queen to d6, you know, black has got excellent coordination. However, this would be unclear. Going back to the game, bishop d2 was played. That allows knight b3. And now I get the impression that white was quite shocked by this knight fork. I'm not sure why he should have been, but sometimes when you're rattled in a game, you know, you do make mistakes. And he comes up with an absolute howler here. I mean, white's got to play rook a2. After which I guess rook a8 and the game continues. But he plays rook to b1. And now I wonder if you can see Golding's lovely finishing touch to the game. See if you can forecast black's next move before I reveal what it actually is. Well, I did say Golding was a superb attacking player. He's also a great tactician. And he played queen takes f1 check. A very nice move, a temporary queen sacrifice, forcing resignation. Robertson resigned because he sees that after king takes f1, knight takes d2 check is a family fork, and black will emerge decisive amounts of material ahead. So Jessica Mellor and Alex Golding, they will also be representing Guildford Chess Club on September the 11th. We look forward to their games.